And our first main topic today gets submitted to us by Ali M, who writes, should a woman ever play Bond? I know the topic came up when it got out that Lashana Lynch was going to be the new 007 agent, not Bond. Anyway, Daniel Craig was just quoted as saying he doesn't think a woman should play Bond, but that better roles for women should be created in Hollywood. What do you think? Should a woman play Bond at some point just to mix it up? Many thanks. All right, thanks a lot for sending that in, Ali, and I appreciate that. And yeah, this is a conversation that comes up an awful lot, actually, right? Because a lot of times when a movie, a reboot, a sequel, either like say gender swaps a character or they switch it up where they'll have a different race, like maybe you had a white character that's now being played by an Asian actor or a black actor, whatever. This is a question that comes up often. And what I have often said to it, and what my attitude towards it is this, is that if the either gender or race of the character in question is not absolutely core and fundamental to who and what that character is, then go ahead and swap it out. I don't care. It can actually become pretty interesting if you swap it out and change it up a little bit. Now, obviously, then there are some characters to whether their ethnicity or their gender is absolutely core to who and what that character is. A good example of that is Black Panther, right? It's absolutely essential, especially when you go back and listen to, and read to why Stan Lee said he created the character in the first place. The ethnicity of Black Panther is an absolute core essential element to who and what that character is. But with a lot of other characters, I would say, Rob, the majority of other characters, it actually doesn't matter. It doesn't matter most of the time. And so go ahead and switch it up and swap it out if you want. Now, with No Time to Die coming out, and the news came out, as they said in their question, Lashana Lynch's character is going to be the new 007. She's not James Bond. It's just that James Bond is retired, and she's got the employee number. Employee number 007, that's now Lashana Lynch's character. But it did bring up a conversation that's been brought up a lot over the years, is could they ever replace James Bond with a female character and say, like, in the next iteration of James Bond movies, could James Bond actually be Jane Bond? Could it be a female character? Now, this kind of came up, and Daniel Craig had something interesting to say about it. This is what Daniel Craig had to say. He said, the answer to that is very simple, Craig told Radio Times. There should simply be better parts for women and actors of color. Why should a woman play James Bond when there should be a part just as good as James Bond, but for a woman? He's a male character. He was written as a male, and I think he'll probably stay as a male. Broccoli said, she's obviously one of the producers and kind of the owners of the rights of Bond, previously told The Guardian, and that's fine. Rob, this is an issue that has come up a number of times, and I've already kind of stated that, like, hey, listen, if either the gender or the ethnicity of the character is not a core essential element to who and what that character is. For example, Superman, who is not white. Superman is an alien organism who just happens to have the appearance of a white guy. Do I believe Superman being white is a core, essential, fundamental issue to who and what makes Superman who he is? I simply do not. It's not. And I've not heard a single valid argument to pretend that he is. But I agree with Daniel Craig here. I think when you look at James Bond, and you look at the DNA of this character, he is quintessentially male. Like, the way his character is, everything about his personality, both the good parts of his personality and the questionable parts of his personality, they are all fundamentally hinge on the fact that he is a dude. And so while I am very open-minded about the idea of, hey, yeah, you want to switch things up, make an Asian character, a black character, a white character, a black character, you know, or whatever, you want to make this, hey, Starbuck in Battlestar Galactica, you want to make Starbuck a girl, that's fine. I'm always very open-minded about that. But I personally believe that the James Bond situation, Rob, is one of those situations where the gender of the character, I don't think the ethnicity matters to James Bond. I think you can have a black James Bond easy, but the gender of Bond is so entrenched in our understanding of who and what makes him who he is. I'd say he's got to stay male. That's my take on it. Rob, what do you think?
Well, I agree with you. I think we really live in a weird time now where this idea that characters somehow by gender swapping them or even race swapping characters that you're somehow giving people better representation. And I don't necessarily think that that's true. I think what Daniel Craig said is absolutely correct. We need more new characters that are people of color and women. And they need their own original characters that can trailblaze the same way that James Bond was a trailblazing character. And, I also don't think it really, like, I agree with you, unless their ethnicity or their gender is baked into the character for however that's done, you can make those changes. But I'll give you an example. If you change the ethnicity of James Bond to black, we know that the experience, especially of being black in America, but there's a different experience of being black in America to being white in America. Or I would assume, I didn't grow up in the UK, but maybe in the UK it's different. But that experience of the world then must somehow be incorporated into the James Bond character. So what does it mean? How would a black James Bond be different from a white James Bond somehow? And if there is no difference, then I think that the gender and race swapping is pandering. But if you incorporate how a James Bond who was black, his background would be different, I think that could be interesting. And I think so if you race or gender swap a character, I would like to see how those changes affect the character itself. I mean, I think it would be kind of interesting. Like if you have, what is the experience of a woman being a 00? A license to kill. Does a woman have a different experience having a license to kill than a man? And if so, what is that difference? And how does that affect the character? To me, that can make a story that can be really interesting. Or a black James Bond who might having to be working for the crown. And the crown, of course, has a long history of colonialism. How does a black James Bond feel about king and country or queen and country? Knowing what Britain's history is. I think all of those things can make for good storytelling. But the real question is, wouldn't female characters and ethnically diverse characters want their own? Why get a hand-me-down character that's already existed? Why not create somebody new that's exciting that audiences can embrace from the beginning?
I see. I'm going to disagree with you a little bit. Because to me, like you said, if you change the ethnicity of the character and it really doesn't fundamentally change anything about the character, then you say there's a negative connotation on that and just saying that's pandering. To me, it's the opposite. To me, it's if you can't make a solid argument about why this character must be white or must be black or must be female or must be male, then to impede on some creative exploration of the character, I think the onus is on the person saying you can't change it. The onus isn't on the person wanting to make the change. I think unless you can make a strong, valid argument about why you can't change something, then the onus is on you. I don't see that as pandering. I just see that as creative exploration. You know what I mean?
I want to be clear. I think though that by doing that, by making the change, you are adding something to that character that didn't previously exist.
Right. But can't you say that every new James Bond, even though they've all been white males, can't you say that every new James Bond has brought something a little unique to Bond? Like Connery's Bond is different from Roger Moore's Bond, which is different from Brosnan's Bond. So, if we know Idris Elba isn't going to be the new James Bond, but I'm just saying, theoretically speaking, if Idris Elba came in and did just what the other actors had done, bring his own flavor, his own uniqueness to the role, like, isn't that in and of itself, something creatively worth exploring?
I think it absolutely could be, which is why I think the fact that if you had a black James Bond, how would he respond to Britain's legacy of colonialism? Would he? Like, would a black James Bond have the same devotion to king and country, or maybe that devotion is different? I just see it as a way to make the storytelling more in-depth and more interesting and more fascinating. I think by just swapping the race of a character and not dealing with how a person of a different race has a different experience in the world is not exactly living up to what you could be doing if you make that kind of a change.
So let me see if I'm understanding you correctly. You're saying it's like, okay, if you're going to make a change like that, like We brought up the example of Starbuck earlier, and I think what you're saying applies to that absolutely directly. Like, so what you're saying is if you're going to make a change, either gender-wise, ethnicity-wise, whatever, just make sure that's reflected a little bit in the character itself. Make sure that change, we see a creative expression of that change in the character itself. Is that what you're saying?
Absolutely, 100%, because that gives you more creative. It gives you a new dimension of storytelling for that character, which makes the female version or the Black version of that character unique and I think more interesting. I mean, not necessarily more interesting than the original, but it gives you storytelling avenues that you didn't previously have.
Right, and we certainly got that with Starbuck in Battlestar Galactica.
Absolutely, 100%, and it made that character uniquely Katie Sackhoff's. I mean, when people think of that character, it's uniquely hers. Look, I would not have had a problem. I've been rewatching The Wire. You know, Idris Elba's a little too, I think, old to play a James Bond. But if you made him James Bond,
Stringer Bell is James Bond, man.
I mean, that guy. No one holds a frame like that guy does. I mean, his look, his face, a glance. When you first meet him in the first episode of The Wire, sitting in that courtroom, you can't take your eyes off that guy. And that's what you need with James Bond.
I keep forgetting you never saw him in The Office either, did you? You never saw Idris Elba in The Office. He's so good in The Office with that voices. Anyway, guys, the question is for you. What do you think about Daniel Craig's comments? I think Rob and I actually both kind of agree with them, maybe for slightly different reasons, but we both agree with what he's saying. What do you guys think about it? Jump down to the comment section below and let us know your thoughts.